Greetings. I'm Reverend Jennifer Cormier, ceremonial artist and proud creator of this podcast. In my recent private work, I've been helping successful women release the pressure they put on themselves so they can feel at peace and have way more fun in their lives. This is exactly what we do at the Grace Collective, a virtual spiritual community of soulful, big hearted creatives who value authentic connection and joy. At the Grace Collective, we practice keeping our hearts open and our sense of humor in the face of life's inevitable challenges. Just like you, we've each moved through various life losses and we've risen up through the ashes. We're leaders, artists, healers, aunties, mothers, grandmothers who gather to heal, grow, and create together. We honor our bodies, the earth, and all beings as sacred, knowing that nature, friendship, and laughter are all good medicine for the soul. We meet at the intersection of spirituality, embodiment, and creativity as part of our activism and our legacy. So I welcome you if you are a soulful woman looking for more community, creativity, laughter, and fun. I invite you to join the Grace Collective. We're offering our listeners 1 month of membership as a gift. Visit www.gracecollective.us and check out the show notes for more details. I look forward to connecting with you there. Until then, I send warmth and gratitude from my heart to yours. Welcome to the Walk Through Grief with Grace podcast, a space for human hearts to gather around stories of loss and love. I'm Jenn Cormier, your grief guide and host. It is my honor to have you join us through this sacred act of listening. May you receive something here that you need, something that is healing and calls forth your compassionate heart. We are so glad you're here. So, welcome. I'm really excited to have Molly Pearson with us today. Hi, Molly. Thanks for coming on.
Hi, it's so nice to be here, Jen.
Yeah. So Molly reached out, and I was so excited to have a chat with her some weeks ago about her project that is very cool. I'll tell you a little bit about her. She's a writer and a storyteller, and she founded something called Birthdays from Beyond. And it's a unique way to stay connected with your loved ones even after they're gone. And she's going to talk about this in just a moment. It was really inspired by a deeply personal moment. And it's a heartfelt project that helps families create lasting memories through handwritten cards, actual, real, old school style birthday cards. Um, and her work it sits at the intersection of grief work, legacy work, and the healing power of story and words. So thanks for being here, Molly.
Yeah, it's great to be here with you, and I'm excited for however this conversation unfolds.
Yeah, and I'm so excited because I reached out and I was like, "Ooh, I would love to experience like what is this box of cards like this?" So Molly was kind enough to send me one, and most of you are listening to this on you know, on a audio only platform, but if you're on YouTube, I received this actual physical box of cards, which is very cool. And this came out of a personal experience for you in your family. Birthday cards are really meaningful and important. So, would you just share the origin story about you and your family and your dad and how you came up with this idea?
Yeah. So a couple of years ago, my dad was diagnosed with cancer, And my dad and I are really close. And my dad is like this big, strong guy who believes he's going to be around forever. And somehow in the back of my mind, I sort of thought he's going to be around forever. And after his diagnosis, I got really in touch with his mortality. And the thing that kept coming up for me, because we're so close and because he's so wise and he offers just the right words at the right time, I thought when my dad dies, there's going to be nobody I want more to help me with my grief than him.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not going to be able to get that because he's the one who has died.
Yeah.
And so, how do I get my dad in this moment of just profound pain and grief and sadness? And I thought about it for a while. And as my birthday was approaching, I thought, man, both my parents are actually really, really excellent at writing birthday cards to me. I save them all, I keep them all, I have them in a box under my bed. I have cards that friends have written me for years under my bed. Um, and so for my birthday, I gave him a big stack of empty birthday cards. And I said, will you fill these out? I'm going to keep them. And after you die, I'm going to open one a year every year after you're gone, because I always want to have something new of you to experience. I
Mm.
want something new of my dad's voice, of my dad's wisdom, of my dad's humor. I don't only want to be moving through old memories. I would still like to have new memories as my life goes on, as I get married or as I move to another state or whatever. I still want something new of him. And so I gave him the stack of cards and he cried and was like, oh God, okay, yeah, I'll do it.
Oh, yeah.
And so he's been working on, the box that I sent you has 15 cards in it, but I gave him a box of like 75.
Oh
And
gosh.
sometimes he'll get through them all, but it's aspirational. Um, but I thought, I can't be the only person on this planet who wants to hear from a parent posthumously, who wants to hear from a parent after they've gone, or from a partner after they've died, or kids wanting to hear from their grandparents. And so I started to put this together, and I actually owe a lot of credit to my dad for the name, because as I was talking to him about the project, he said, well, if you did it, you could call it Birthdays from Beyond. And as soon as he said that, I just got the whole download. It was like, this is what the box needs to look like. This is what the cards need to look like. These are what the question prompts inside the box are going to look like. Here's how I want to deliver it. And it was just, it all kind of came together in that moment when he gave me the name. And I thought, I have to move this forward, because for anyone who wants this experience, I want them to have it.
Mm. Yeah. Such a wonderful idea, because I know, we talked about our fathers, and most people who are listening to the podcast know that my dad's death was my, my first dive into a real year-long intentional grief process. And um I think what happens often, I mean, it's different for every person, right? But if there's a sort of terminal diagnosis that happens, um, what happened with my dad anyway is he really went into healing mode. So he didn't want to think about his death. He wanted to think about living and healing and doing the healing work, whether that meant his cancer was cured miraculously from stage 4 or whatever. He wanted to focus on living, on experiencing life, on healing. And so it was kind of challenging to talk shop about death and a good death and collaborating with something from the afterlife, right? Not That's not where his mind or spirit or emotions were really at. And so I've gone through a couple different death doula trainings, and one of the things I've taken away from that is, gosh, if we can do work like this, thinking about our death and writing these cards. I started working on you know a card to my son when I got your box. If we can do that when everybody's healthy and well, that is ideal, I think, because then we have the energy for it, we have the bandwidth for it, the mental capacity, because sometimes if there's an accident and we lose, there's a traumatic brain injury, or suddenly we've slipped down the road of dementia and then we're not able to, so I love to, I think this is a great project to do now, and I'm in my late 40s. We don't have to wait till, a cancer diagnosis to do something like this. So I just want to put that out there that there's no time soon enough to do a project like this, A, and then B, when my dad died, there was a journal that he had written in like his last year, and I knew he had carried it with him. And so I took that journal, and I was hoping, like, my wish was I was going to open that journal and he would have written some letters to me in the journal for me to find. And I flipped through that thing, and it was like maybe a fourth, the first fourth was filled up and then it was just blank. And he stopped writing, and it was just like near the end, it was like, what he ate, like a little food log, blueberries, da, da, da. And that was it. It just sort of got less and less. And there weren't those messages that I imagined he might have written, or those stories. So, the best thing was, like, he mentioned we had brunch one day. Like, I had brunch with, my mom and I, and he had just written that in his journal, and that was touching. So there were just some sort of everyday things that he wrote that were touching to me that he didn't mean for me to necessarily read. But what a cool idea this is, that you can actually collaborate with your loved ones, whether it's your partner, your siblings, your parents, your kid, grandparents, and write these letters. And we don't know, obviously, if we have a parent and they've been diagnosed with a stage 4 cancer, likely they're going to die before us, but we never know, right? Like, anyone can go first. It's not necessarily like grandparents are going to go, then parents, and like, we don't know. So how cool would it be for everyone to write some letters, and, and to have them for,
Yeah.
you know,
And to your point, it doesn't need to be, especially if we do it when we are younger or we're not faced with imminent death, it doesn't need to be a morose process.
mhm.
Maybe I can ask you about your experience writing the cards, because I was very intentional about including in the box a list of prompts and questions just to get people thinking about, let's overcome some writer's block and let's write a card that's meaningful. And I don't know if you used any of those questions or not, but they're sort of twofold. One is where you can reflect on some memories of your life, and others where you can reflect on memories and qualities of your kid and be able to write to both sides. And I think many parents really like thinking about how great my child is. Like, you are so brave in this instance, or you bring so much, life and spark to the world, or you're so creative. And so being able to reflect on those things can be a joy and doesn't have to be quite so hard and sad. And
Yeah, so joyful. And what it got me starting to think about was, I loved all of your prompts, and there are 5 prompts per card, and you've got a bunch of cards in here which are really cool. And I started thinking about the gift of specificity. I'm in a playback theater company, and when people give details about something and you can get a detail. I also officiate weddings, is one of the things I've been doing for some years now. And um, when I work with a couple on their wedding, I'm really asking for specific little stories. And those stories get woven in. And then that's what makes the wedding so touching, because I'm not just talking about, oh, rings are round, and, the things that everybody says about love and rings and infinity. And, we hear that everywhere. So what makes it special is something specific, right? Like this, remember that crazy, pillow fighting show we watched? Or remember when we thought the house was going to burn down and you grabbed the cat and the mustard went everywhere? There's just like those things paint us a picture and are really touching. So I was thinking about one of the prompts you had was sort of about qualities. Think about qualities of my kid, and what are some of their best qualities, and um, when was the time they were generous, or when was the time. So I remember this time, it was maybe a year ago, and someone was outside the grocery store, um, when you're driving out, and asking for money. Someone was home, had a sign, "I'm homeless," and and we were looking for, do we have a granola bar? Do we have a piece of fruit? Something that we can give. And he said, "Oh, mom, I have that $100 bill at home. Um, we could go and give him that, and then he can get a home. He can get a home with that."
Wow.
Right. And I remember tearing up, thinking, oh my gosh, like, if it were only that easy, right? We live in San Diego, and the home, it's like thousands of dollars to get a home, but just the generosity of heart that he just wanted to grab. He had $100 bill, which is like, this is for like a 9-year-old. That's a lot of cash. And he was just, I could just give that to him, and he could have a home. So that was a story that, and I haven't written it yet, but I want to just make one card just about that particular memory. And I think what's so special about highlighting memories of these great qualities of our children, I'm thinking of now as I'm an adult, there are moments when, maybe I'm feeling guilt or shame, or, oh my gosh, I didn't do this. I could have done that. I should have done that. Any of those voices that come into our head, then we get to open these cards and have a reflection of a best part of ourselves,
Mm.
and see like, oh, this is what this, my parent or my grandparent or whoever loved me, they saw this in me. And then it's like a reminder for me. That's like such a healing act for me to remember that piece of me.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And if I may, take the art of specificity maybe one step farther, this is also something that I learned from my dad. And he will say something. So he's a couples therapist, and he sees a lot of people who are having a hard time.
Yeah.
And he has an assignment for them. It's called the Daily Double. And every day for 30 days, each partner is responsible for giving a compliment to their partner. And a lot of times he gets a lot of like, I knew therapy would be hard, but I didn't know I'd have to compliment my partner hard. you know, Anyways, make a short story long. What he says is if you want to take the compliment further, or the story that you're telling, or the specificity even further, let them know why you appreciate that thing. And so I could say to you, Jenn, I really love the background of your altar behind you. Or I could say, Jenn, I really love the background behind you because it tells me that nature is so important to you, and you're deeply connected with plants and with living things and with respect for the natural world around you. And it really tells me that how things look is important to you, and you want to be inspired by your environment. And it helps me feel so good looking at this thing that's right behind you.
Right. Yeah. It's so important, because then we're not just, because it goes from a judgment, right? Even if it's a positive, even if it's a compliment, it's still like, I'm judging you. I'm saying I love that, or I don't love that, or that's good, or that's bad. It's still sort of in that, I'm giving you something, but if I can give it to you and then tell you it affected me like this, and now I feel like that. So I think that's such a gift, because we know how we affected someone. So that's really wonderful. Oh, she sees that value in me, and that makes her feel good being on screen with me, right? So I love that. So if we could think about adding that layer to the card, right? When you said this about giving this homeless person your $100 bill, it brought tears to my eyes, because I was whatever what I was worried about in the world and this and that really gave me hope. And then he can understand how, an action of his or some words of his really affected me in a good way.
Right, right. That it's not just about like, I admire you for wanting to give money away.
Right.
It's you filled me with hope and I got to feel connected to your generous spirit.
Yeah.
And yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Um, so what's been your experience, Molly? So this was originally for you, right? Like you wanted to experience your dad's wisdom and humor and presence after he dies. And you here, Dad, here's a stack of cards. And then you got the idea for the Birthdays from Beyond, the name from him, and now moving this forward. What's your experience been like? Have these boxes of Birthdays from Beyond gone out to people? Have you gotten feedback? What's it been like since then?
Yeah, so there's I think two parts of the journey. There's the sort of creative entrepreneurship part of it, and then there's the um, feedback I've gotten as it's kind of gone out into the world
Mhm.
part of it. And, from the first um, to the first point, what has the process or the experience been like in this creative birthing of this project? There have been highs and lows, and there's a lot of stuff that I don't know how to do.
Yeah.
And so that's been a process of finding the right people who can help me out with it.
Yeah.
And I owe a lot of credit to people on my team who are willing to work with my sort of creative ADD brain
Mhm.
and help bring this general idea that I have into something very specific.
Mhm.
And so that is, some days I'm like feeling more inspired than other days, and then I think at this point it's really not about me and sort of what I feel like doing. It's how can I help make this of service to more people who, because I hear so much, God, if only I'd had this when my mom was diagnosed with cancer. If only I had had this when, my dad died. If only I had this 2 years ago before my dad got diagnosed with dementia.
Right.
And so a lot of that is what I've been hearing from folks is I wish I had this way back when.
Mhm.
And for the folks who it has gone out, it's live, it's in the world, a number of people have it and are going through the process. And I've heard a number of things like, wow, this really gives me something to do with my like great uncle while he's in hospice. There's a lot of downtime. And so what do we do? And I pull out a card and they're, this person's great uncle can't write, but they just have the conversation. And so this person will write down what their uncle has to say in the cards, and then they seal them up and keep them for later. So it's not a great mystery what's going to be in the card,
Right.
but it is prompting conversations and it is helping them with some of that um, sort of excess time of what to do, what do we talk about. We don't just want to talk about the mashed potatoes that you ate for the fifth time this week.
Right.
Let's talk about something a little bit more significant and meaningful.
Mhm.
A friend of mine has been using them in conjunction with his father, who does have dementia. And he goes, I try every day. And sometimes I get one version of my dad, and sometimes I get others.
Yeah.
And when something's coming through that seems really viable, I've asked a question and I will also jot things down for him because he can't write.
Yeah.
Um, the first gal who helped me put this together, she bought a box for her cousin, who miscarried twins.
Mhm.
And she writes cards to her angel babies. And it's a way of helping her feel connected and closer to them, even though her babies are already gone. She gets to go through this process of, it would have been your first birthday today, and I can imagine us walking down the hallway together and putting you in your high chair and me feeding you applesauce.
Hmm.
And so I think that there's as many uses for this as there are types of relationships.
Yeah. How beautiful. It's like it can go both ways if you've lost a child or, a miscarriage or stillbirth or, can a way to process over time sending these cards to the beyond. Okay, it can come from the beyond or they can go to the beyond.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And I was thinking about that with the cards, like, oh, I could write a few to my son and I could write a few to my mom. My mom's in her 70s, she's still alive and healthy. What if I die first? I can have some cards to give to her. I could have some cards to give, right? So it got my brain thinking that I don't need to just write the whole box to my son, like your dad is writing the whole box to you.
Right.
Um, so I love that it could be any configuration. And I would imagine in that example you were giving with the uncle, um, that would be really healing for if there's somebody who is dying to then emotionally go through and start thinking about, stories that were important to them, relationships that were meaningful, and to sort of prepare for death in doing that life review,
Mm.
but doing it sharing, they can share verbally, and then whoever they're sharing it with can write it in a card,
Yeah.
or really the whole family, or for someone else, or for them, or however it works.
Right. Yeah. You're reminding me of someone who shared their experience with me of writing these cards. It was to their young children. And this man is maybe 50. He's very healthy. But inside of the cards, he's adding things like, here's a photo of your grandparents' wedding. Here's the story of how your grandparents met. Here's a photo of me when I got my driver's license. And so it's this more textural way of sharing some of the legacy because, if these kids never ask their dad, how did grandma and grandpa meet? Because
Mhm.
grandma and grandpa died before these kids were born. And so they're getting to hear another layer of story and of family legacy when they're opening up these cards. And so it is sort of a to beyond, from beyond, um, all kinds of creative additions to it can be made.
Yeah. And that was another thing that I was thinking about because um, when you get this box of cards, there is some space in it, right? So it's a box, there are cards. I could, you've got all the prompts and the cards in there, but there's also some space where I could, you know, find a card from a postcard or a card that's really meaningful because so and so is into, you know, um, some sort of collector's item, and I could find a specialty card and add those cards to the mix and add um, like memorabilia, like you're saying, photos. I was thinking about objects, little things from my altar. I could even wrap them up in little, like a little package with a bow, and they could go with the card. So it could really turn into a little treasure box.
Yeah, yeah. A treasure box, a time capsule.
Yeah.
The image I'm getting in my mind, I don't know if this is morose, is like when I was younger, I loved going to the dentist because he would always present me with a treasure chest at the
Yeah.
end and he'd
Right.
open it up and be like, pick your prize, pick your toy.
Right. Right.
It's like a legacy dentist treasure chest.
There's secret Santas from beyond, it could be
Yeah.
like, it's like, what's the gift today, that I'm gonna pull out and open up. Um, yeah, so there's really so many creative ways that that this could work. And I love that, I'm an artist and a performer and a creative, and I love collaboration. Creativity, community, and collaboration are main values for me. And the community that we're building, the Grace Collective, that's their values for everyone that's part of that. And what I really love, you know, I love being a part of things that are collaborative events, right? Creative events where, for example, we've got our 3-day virtual retreat coming up on Father's Day weekend, right? And it's we do equinox and solstice retreats on the, four times a year. And, the Father's Day one is really tender for me because every Father's Day, my dad's not around. So I love to create something um, in collaboration with other folks that, maybe I'm writing or I'm dancing or I'm weaving something that feels meaningful into that day. Um, and I really love thinking about, and again, some people think, they kind of give me an eyebrow and are like, oh gosh, that's something you you want to think about. But thinking about my memorial service, and this is what I've learned, folks that have decided they wanted to have home funerals, and they'll write their 5 wishes, which is a legal document. It's legal, I think, in 47 states around um, not only what you wish for medically, if you're not no longer able to speak for yourself, you can have all of those things written there, but also, if I could have, a quote unquote good death, what would that look like for me? And very much like, okay, hey, if all things are equal, here are the types of flowers I'd want. Here's my playlist. Here's what I'd want to wear. Here's what I'd want this to look like. Um, and I know that folks who have chosen medical aid in dying, which is legal now in parts of our country, not everywhere, but that's where, if someone has um, a terminal illness and they have their doctors giving them less than 6 months to live and they're having a very painful and challenging time, they can choose to have medical aid in dying that they have to administer to themselves. And what has been so beautiful, I've seen so many different video clips and things of folks we had an episode with Lauren Kemple and Jan Carlson, who was diagnosed with ALS at a very young age and was deteriorating. And he decided that he wanted to go the medical aid and dying path, and created for himself a big party, his memorial service, while he was living. So he did, a big party, and then planned out, I want to die outside, to your point with like nature. He was an herbalist. I want to die under the trees. This is where I'm going to be. Here's who I want to be there. I want to hear all the invitations. I want there to be singing. And people were able to come and read to him while he was still living how important he was in their lives and how he affected them, and it was so touching to hear about that. And we think about, you know, oftentimes weddings and funerals, those moments, oh my gosh, I got a bigger picture of who this person was or who these people were, that each person only knows a sliver of the story. And at a memorial service, you get all of these different, like the 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 full spectrum of stories come to the table. And they're calling that a living memorial, so that people can, have that while they're still alive. Because it's like, wow, I wish this person could actually hear all these things.
Yeah.
No, they're dead. I mean, of course, maybe they're hearing them in spirit, but how cool if you could still be there to experience that. And um, so I think that kind of thoughtfulness around our death, and like, how do we want, can we have some choice around some things, and how can we um think consciously about, okay, how are the people that I love most going to be affected by my leaving, and how can we create connection, and how can we create meaning, and really make this a space filled with beauty and love that's going to touch all of these people and then ripple out.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
it's not really
totally.
about me, it's about, so I think that there's so many ways to do that. And I love that this is, a tangible way for people to have that connection across the veil.
Yeah, you're reminding me, I mean, that story of planning your death and how you want it to go and all the aspects, that you want a part of it, is sort of reminding me a little bit of a, I guess, short two-part story, which is my dad saying to my grandmother, my mom's mom, so his mother-in-law, they were at dinner one night and he said, I don't think that we should wait for you to be dead for me to know what I would say at your eulogy. So would it be okay with you if I told you right now what I would say at your eulogy? And she said, okay. So he does. And I've heard that story forever growing up. And just around my college graduation, I planned this little party for a bunch of my friends. And we taped photos and a Ziploc bag around the room of like a photo of each person with a Ziploc bag under it. And over the course of the night, everyone was writing little things to each person. And then you would put the note in the Ziploc bag. It was sort of a living eulogy party, but in the written form for everyone who was there. You could say as much or as little as you wanted. And, it could be silly or morose or kind or whatnot. But I think that there can be I think at the heart of all of this, like whether someone uses the Birthdays from Beyond process or this living eulogy party or just having conversations, in hospice, the heart of all of it is like, how can we be more connected to the living while they're still here and share the impacts that people have on our lives
Yeah.
while there's still time.
Yeah.
And it is going to get harder or nothing is guaranteed, but how do we do it now while we have you alive sitting across from me and me alive sitting across from you? And what's it going to take to start to share some of the impacts and effects that our loved ones have on us?
Yeah. And I think that the benefit of that is deeper connection. It's a wider, more breadth of love. Um, we open our hearts a little bit more to that person or those people. And then perhaps we can have more courage to live or, you know, to be more present or, I think that those the depth of that really does affect a wider circle of people than we would ever know.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I'll give you a definition of courage that I really love, which is courage isn't the absence of fear. It's deciding that something else is more important than your fear.
Yeah. Yeah. So powerful because I think we walk around thinking, oh, those people can do that because they must be more courageous than me and I've got all this fear. It's like, no, we're all human and we all are afraid in the quiet depths of our being of all kinds of things. And it's like, yeah, you're gonna have fear. And I love that where it's like, and this connection is even more important to me than my fear.
Exactly.
So that it's a really beautiful framing. Thanks for that.
I also got to thank my dad for that one.
Thanks, Dad.
He's all over this episode.
What's your dad's name, Molly?
His name's Pete.
Pete. Thanks, Pete. Appreciate you. We appreciate you. So how, we've talked about the Birthdays from Beyond box and the process. And you offer all kinds of prompts to help people along. If somebody's interested, and we've got show notes, but I want to say it verbally on the podcast. If somebody's like, oh my gosh, I need this box for me, for my kid, for my mom, for whoever, how can they find it and how can they find you?
Yeah, great question. So you can go to my website, which is birthdaysfrombeyond.com.
Great.
And you'll find everything you need there. You can buy as many boxes as you want. I did a sale over Christmas and this woman bought 7 of them. And she must have a big family or want to give them as gifts. I think they make good gifts for people who might be in situations where they could be potentially facing the imminent loss of a loved one. So on the website, you can order the boxes, and there is also something that I can send you if you would like, which is just tips for how to write a meaningful card. That's on the website too. Just let me know where you want me to send it, and I will. And it gives a couple of my sort of best tried and true tips for being able to overcome that writer's block and write something that does feel meaningful and will be remembered. And then if you want to follow me on socials, I'm also on Instagram at Birthdays from Beyond as well.
Fantastic. I love that. And I know that you and your family have this history of really rich birthday cards, and you have this treasure box under your bed of all these cards. And not everybody has that. Some people just have, the parents that says, happy 35th, I love you, mom, whatever, XO. It's pretty basic. So I love that this can kind of stretch our muscles around, how to go a little bit deeper, and then that can also ripple out from the cards to actually how we might speak to one another too. So um what a great opportunity.
Yeah, I'm here for the ripple effect.
Yeah, totally. Totally. Well, thank you, Molly. Our time is coming to a close. Is there something that you want to leave listeners with that feels important to say?
I don't know why this is coming to mind. I don't think it really matters why it's coming to mind. I'll say it anyways, but it's been popping into my head for probably the last 10 minutes, which is, there was a period of time when I was going through a really rough time. And I took all of this stash of cards that I had underneath my bed, and I taped up my entire bathroom mirror with these cards. And I replaced this image that I had of myself at the time, which is somebody who was lazy, useless, worthless, fat, ugly, like, just the critical voices were, it was a civil war inside my head. And I covered the whole mirror with all of these cards, and I had no choice but to look at a very different reflection every single time I walked into the bathroom.
Mhm.
And I would read them and I would read them, and different people saying different things. And it really helped to rewrite what was going on for me and my own internal dialogue. And I hope that that's useful to somebody who is listening to this right now, because it really did a substantial amount of heavy lifting for my mental health at the time. And it was just something that really, really shifted me out of something really quite dark and into a version of myself where I felt like life was much more manageable and doable, and I could kind of come out of my shell a little bit more.
Mm. Yeah, somebody needed to hear that. I think there are definitely a few people that might relate to that sort of internal pressure they put on themselves, and the internal civil war of those critical voices that is, I think, way more common than we think it is, especially for women, probably for all people. But um, what a beautiful reframe to take all of these cards and all of these stories of yourself and put them on your mirror. So you were, that was the reflection. Um, Really beautiful project.
Yeah, a kudos to my best friend for that idea.
Yeah, what a great idea. Yeah, kudos to her. Well, thank you so much, Molly. It's been such a pleasure to have you on. And I just really appreciate, your spirit and your creativity and, bringing this alive and for all of us who will benefit. Um,
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you for spending time with me. It's so pleasant to just be sitting across from you and like to feel your energy and see your smile and just get to absorb all of your own embodied wisdom and perspective on creativity and grief. So I've really, really enjoyed being here with you.
Yeah. Oh, well, fantastic. We'll definitely be in touch, and we'll make sure to put the links for Birthdays from Beyond on the show notes. You can find Molly at Birthdays from Beyond on Instagram as well if you're active there. And hope to connect with you again really soon. Yeah, thank you. Let's see. From the bottom of our hearts, thank you so much for being a listener to this podcast. We really want to stay in touch with you long term. So, if you don't already receive our e newsletter, we'd love to offer you inspiration, insights, and news about how things are evolving and how we can support you on your journey. So, at the top of the Walk Through Grief with Grace website, that's walkthroughgriefwithgrace.com, you'll see a yellow button and you can sign up for our free gift, and that will put you on our e-newsletter list and we can stay in touch with you. So, thank you so much for your spirit and your presence, and we will see you soon. Thank you for being here with us. Thank you for listening. You are a vital part of this podcast. You are why we are here. Let us close today by placing a hand on our hearts and a hand on our bellies, feeling our breath move through our bodies. May we feel connected. May we be at peace. May we be love. As we breathe, let us acknowledge that in this moment we are, in fact, alive, and this is a miraculous gift. Let's bow our heads gently to our hearts. Thank you for listening. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for doing something healing and kind in this moment right now. We give great thanks. We give great thanks. We give great thanks. And it is done until next time. May you walk gently out in the world and be gentle and loving with yourself. Much love from my heart to yours, and bye for now.